Bosnia, you've said is your proudest moment as a journalist. Can you talk about that experience in general? What happened in Bosnia to you as a reporter?
Coming off the Gulf War, which was an incredible adventure for journalists, and to go right into the darkness of what was happening in the Balkans was a really rude shock and a rude awakening. It was also something that I didn't fully appreciate and understand initially. I didn't realize how different it was. But as we reported, and again, I was there with many of my colleagues for the entire debacle, from when it started in '91 to when it ended with Dayton at the end of '95, and I stayed beyond during the peace phase of it. But what we found there was not an adventure. What we found there was a real challenge, both journalistically and morally. The challenge journalistically was to cover it, which we did, I think, very well, because again, we had a lot of access, because there were no big armies controlling us. Morally, we had to understand what we were faced with, that this wasn't, as the politicians, the US politicians, the European politicians were saying, this wasn't just an ugly, dirty little civil war. This was just an explosion of ancient ethnic hatreds that had gone on for hundreds of years, and oh my goodness, we can't do anything about it. It's designed to be like this, and it will continue until it's over. No, what we found there was a genocide. And we found genocide 50 years after genocide of the Holocaust. We found it in our backyard, on our watch, in Europe, and in front of the most sophisticated electronic media and broadcastability that history had ever seen. And still nothing was being done about it. For 4 years, one side was able to slaughter another side for purely ethnic reasons, to ethnically cleanse and to kill and to create ethnically pure zones. This is the definition of genocide. And we called it. We called it, and it wasn't popular. I found my voice because I was criticized, and I was criticized by some people for quote unquote taking sides. And I was shocked, and I was upset, and I couldn't believe it. And when you're accused of violating the golden rule of journalism, which is objectivity, you really, if you're serious, you wonder what's going on. What have you done? How, are you wrong? And I had to really think about it, examine it, try to understand what I was meant to be doing and why I was there, and what does objectivity actually mean. And I believe that in situations of gross violation of human rights, of gross violations of humanity, of genocide, of crimes of war, there is a different standard that is applied. Objectivity, I believe, means giving each side their hearing, but not treating each side the same, not drawing a moral equivalence, which would be a false equivalence, not saying on the one hand, on the other hand, the person who's being sniped and killed is somehow equal to the person who's sniping and killing. The forces who are bombarding, besieging, and shelling a city full of civilians do not have the same moral standing as those who are being bombed, shelled, starved, and besieged. And that is a truth. That was the truth that we found and that we reported, and that to this day set the standard, certainly for myself and my generation, of how we report, how we tell the stories when we're faced with these severe situations. If you think that it is your duty to see the murdered and the murderer and say, and give them equal time and equal weight on the false impression that you are being objective, then you are an accomplice. And if you're neutral, and if you're an accomplice in this situation, you are an accomplice to genocide. And I wasn't going to do it.